There we go. There's our recording. All right. So I'll start with introducing our presenters. So today, Beth Hassett, Weave's longtime CEO, will be presenting alongside Timiza Wash. Timiza is the Director of Equity and Transformational Change here at Weave and has been a part of Weave for quite some time as well. So thank you once again for being here, and take it away, Beth.
Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. Thank you for joining us, and I'm excited that Timiza is also joining us and sharing about the work she does here at Weave. So the theme of our discussion today is partnerships, because Weave does not exist in a vacuum and we just can't do it alone. So we prioritize partnerships of all types to ensure that there's no wrong door to go through to get help at Weave, to make sure we're reaching people who perhaps wouldn't reach out to Weave on their own, but are comfortable reaching out to a trusted partner who can then do a warm handoff to us. And just to expand what we're able to offer our own clients, because very often they have needs to overcome the barriers that they're experiencing, and we can't offer what they need. So it's great to have people in the community who are already doing things, and we're very committed to not reinventing the wheel and not duplicating services. There are plenty of nonprofits out there, and we want to make sure that we are leveraging what we do best and taking advantage of what others do best. So we have different types of partnerships, which I think is important to point out. We have a lot of embedded partnerships where we are actually on site at another location. And I think this is a really important thing to point out, because I can tell you 8-9 years ago, we were not embedded anywhere. If you needed services from Weave, you pretty much had to come down to our K Street offices, which was a huge barrier for people with transportation issues, childcare issues, just maybe not feeling comfortable coming to downtown Sacramento. So we started looking at how can we deploy our staff out to other locations so that they can be there in the neighborhoods and the communities where people can access help. And so it really was a different service model that we put into play, and I think it served us in the community very well. So in those embedded ones, we're on site. And then we also have community partnerships where it could be a collaborative that meets regularly. It might be that we just have a really strong referral system and referral network, so we're getting people into services more collaboratively. But in those cases, they're more virtual, for lack of a better term, and but rather than having somebody on site. So these are the types of partnerships that we have. We have 4 partnerships with medical providers, 7 in family resource centers, 5 with law enforcement, 11 in schools and colleges, and 9 that we're just calling and the rest, other agencies. So we'll go through each of these and highlight some specific partnerships within each of these categories, but that's generally what we're talking about. So I'm going to turn it over to Timiza to talk about our various medical partnerships and highlight one in particular.
Yes, so thank you, Beth. So we work with all hospitals in the Sacramento region. Our hospitals listed here, Kaiser Permanente and WellSpace, where we hold our group counseling, and embedded group counselors are there. And so we have that facility that's really helpful in working with our different advocates to provide that care. Our Sutter Medical Bear program, which is where our SART advocate SART program, Sexual Assault Response Team, is able to connect with survivors with evidentiary exams. Then we have our Violence Prevention Navigator, who is funded by Sutter, but it also is a position that supports our domestic violence patients. And this advocate is this navigator is really vital in supporting a lot of our hospitals and really that connector in providing the gap for someone wanting to access services after being victimized. So having that navigator at the hospital is a warm welcome, and then they connect closely with the nurses and social workers at the hospital. And then Dignity, which I'll talk more about, is another one of Weave's partners that is embedded as a dedicated Weave patient advocate, is dedicated within Dignity Health's Mercy Family Health Medical Safe Haven. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Within Dignity, so the Medical Safe Haven, it provides medical care for victims and survivors of human trafficking in a safe and trauma-informed environment. Understanding the complexities of human trafficking, our Medical Safe Haven is a teaching hospital that uses the multidisciplinary approach to serving this population. Weave's embedded advocate, they work to support survivors by receiving patient referrals, establishing patients in the Medical Safe Haven program, scheduling appointments, sending reminders, coordinating patient care, enrolling patients in medical insurance programs, following up over the phone and via text. With survivors of trafficking who have experienced such harm, this patient advocate is really vital. It really helps them in securing their medical programming, following up with having a survivor not feeling maybe comfortable in accessing services, but when they are at the hospital, that advocate really helps them navigate, advocates for them, and even present for them at the appointment, and is able to connect with that physician. So it really has been a successful program and partnership of ours.
And one of the things, just to add, that's so critical about having partners in the medical community is we know that a lot of victims feel more comfortable disclosing what's going on for themselves with a medical provider. So making sure that we're training and working with doctors and nurses and other providers to really be looking for the signs of domestic violence, and being able to very gently ask if everything's okay at home can make a big difference. And a lot of times that's the first place that people actually do disclose that. So that's a big part of our being on site at the hospitals and in the medical clinics is to encourage them to be that sympathetic ear and provide that handoff to Weave. Law enforcement is another important category of partnerships that we have. We are in 4 of the police departments, well, 3 police departments and the sheriff's department. And we are also in the youth detention facility. What we do in the youth detention facility is a little bit different. We are working with the youth who are either already victims of sex trafficking or are at risk of being victims of sex trafficking. And so we're doing groups and counseling in there to help build their self-esteem, help them understand what being exploited looks like. A lot of those kids don't think what's happened to them is called trafficking, and they think that they're in control of those relationships. But what we're doing is helping them really understand that if there's an adult that is putting them in harm's way and is asking them to do something that maybe they're not comfortable doing, that actually is exploitation. So it's preventative work, and it's intervening in what's already happened to some of them. But Citrus Heights Police Department, we have an embedded advocate, also in Elk Grove and SAC PD, and then the Sheriff's Department. And the advocates have a really important role. I mean, we depend on law enforcement to hold accountable the people who have broken the law and do the investigating so that it can go to the DA's office, whether it's a sexual assault or a domestic violence incident or sex trafficking. So it's important that we support their efforts, and they depend on the victims being willing to collaborate with them in putting a case together. So even though they're the ones who are actually charging somebody with the crime, they're giving the information to the DA's office who charges them with the crime. If you've got a victim that's not cooperating and isn't comfortable with the process, they probably aren't going to move forward. So we also know that in the immediate aftermath of a domestic violence call, especially if the abuser is in jail for the night or longer, that is a time when people are very receptive to being offered help and hearing that what's going on for them doesn't have to continue and that there's somebody out there who could provide support to them. So getting to them in that little tiny window of time is critical. So after law enforcement goes to a domestic violence incident in particular, and it's one of the most common crimes that they are dispatched to. Once everything's secure, the advocate will show up on the scene and talk to the victim and provide them with information about how to access services. They also then do follow-up, usually the next day, or if they weren't able to be dispatched, they follow up on every single call that anybody went out on. And the goal is to connect them to Weave services. We also follow them all the way through the investigation, because sometimes investigations take a long time. It can be really confusing for the victim to know what's going on. They can be really scared because now the abuser's out of jail and is threatening them. So we can help them get restraining orders, but also provide counseling and other supports to make sure that that they're comfortable throughout the process. So what we've found is we've really been able to build rapport and trust with the patrol officers and deputies. Any partnership that we're talking about today is really the marriage of two very different cultures. You know, Weave has its culture where we believe clients, we support clients, we're very trauma informed. You know, we're going into law enforcement, they're coming at it from a completely different standpoint. And working with them to say, you know, it's important when you're interviewing a victim that you sound compassionate and that you're asking questions in such a way that they feel comfortable giving you the answers. You know, recognize that with trauma, people don't always remember things in the order that they happened. So it's not that the victim is lying to you. They just might not remember that thing that happened in sequence that they should have told you about as number 2, and they're telling you about it as number 10, or they're forgetting completely and calling you and telling you the next day. What we've seen is an increase in the number of clients receiving longer term Weave support because they are accessing those life-changing and life-saving services, and also a dramatic increase in successful prosecution rates because, again, we've got a victim who is the primary witness, who is participating in the investigation and also is much more comfortable and confident in participating in any trial that happens and whatever else law enforcement needs. And over the past 3 years, we've assisted more than 2,200 victims through these partnerships. So it's a big part of what we're doing out there in our embedded sites. Getting to kids through primary prevention education is a big part of our strategy, and also working on college campuses with not kids anymore, but still very at risk for sexual assault in particular, dating violence in addition, is one of our big strategies for our prevention education department. So on the right, you see all of this list of schools that we're in: Hiram Johnson, Leotata Floyd, California Middle School, McClatchy, and Wilsey Wood. That is the entire continuum K through 12 of 5 schools where we use an approach where we're saturating those kids with education. Starting from the day they start kindergarten, we are having age-appropriate conversations about boundaries, that you have the right to consent or not to consent to things, healthy relationships, and we get all the way up to middle school and high school where we're talking about the nitty-gritty of dating violence and sexual assault and alcohol-assisted rape, and really getting into things that older kids are able to hear. But the idea is that this is just something you talk about all the way through school. We're in the Natomas Unified School District. That's a brand new relationship where we are on those campuses, doing all of the sorts of things that we do in our feeder school system. And we're also all over the community doing workshops and one-off health classes. You know, we know that a one-off doesn't do the same, doesn't have the same effect as being in a school continuously, but we also want to be everywhere. We want to get that communication out to as many kids as we can. On the college campuses, we're at CSUS, and they just contracted with us for a second advocate because they really have seen the value of having an advocate on campus and know that they need more, especially now that the population is back in person again. On the Los Rios campuses, we have one advocate that spends one day a week at each of those schools, but is on call for all of them all week long, and in all of those cases, our advocate is the safe place that somebody can come report a sexual assault, especially if they don't feel comfortable going to the college right away. They have a right to have a confidential place to come to and get support, to learn about what might be the consequences of reporting a sexual assault, especially at CSUS, where they may live on campus with the person that assaulted them, and it could have repercussions for them just, socially, personally, and they might be in a lot of fear. So that's one of the primary roles of the advocates, in addition to working on campus. And I'll tell you about what we do at CSUS, and we do similar things on all those other campuses. So since 2019, we have had an embedded campus advocate. They provide workshops and trainings to college athletes and the coaching staff, because we know that these student leaders have a lot of power on campus and a lot of visibility. So getting to them and having them be partners with us is an important piece of the prevention work that we do. The Greek system, we've trained 19 chapters of Greek life on sexual assault prevention and bystander intervention, because the Greeks have parties, and often there's alcohol served, and alcohol is the number one most used date rape drug. So we're working with them to be good bystanders. If you notice somebody taking advantage of somebody or moving in that direction, what might you do to intervene and make sure that that sexual assault does not happen? We have a table at events. We put on awareness events and collaborate with other campus programming and make sure that there's visibility out there about sexual assault prevention, but also that we can actually be of help. And we provide individual support to hundreds of those students who come in after following a sexual assault and need to talk to somebody and get advice about what to do next. In addition, we host a Sexual Assault Awareness Month and a Domestic Violence Awareness Month each year. Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and we call it Action Month, because we want you to not just be aware, we want you to do something about it, is April. And Domestic Violence Action Month is October. And so we provide access to resources. We also create trauma-informed education and messaging that we use campus-wide and in classrooms, partnering with professors. And we just work with anybody on campus who's getting to students, and to make sure that we're spreading the word and that everybody's hearing our messaging. I have a quote from our longtime Sac State advocate. She says, "I supported a student through a sexual assault hearing, through reporting to police, for advocating for academic accommodations so that she could catch up in school. The perpetrator was arrested, and I connected them to counseling, and they graduated last May from CSUS, and she's enjoying the next chapter of her life. I think of her from time to time and feel so incredibly lucky to have provided care for her. She's one of the strongest, kindest, and most resilient people I've ever met." So, that is the satisfying thing for our staff, is when we actually see somebody through what was probably the worst day of their life and help them move through that trauma and heal, and then move on with their life, because that's ultimately the goal, that they can get past what happened to them and be a whole person again. These are some photos of action on campus. Those jeans are from Denim Day. which is that during Sexual Assault Awareness Month, there is our outgoing president of the school, Dr. Nelson, doing his stingers up there. We're training the Alpha Chi Omega chapter. And then that's an example of our table where we're at an event, our team. And these are some fun bracelets from an elementary school. They all have affirmative words that the kids were able to pick the word that meant something to them. And they made a bracelet that helps them feel strong. And, you know, having good self-esteem is one of the best things that we can help to boost in kids so that they don't end up being perpetrators or victims of violence. So our family resource centers, we are in these 7 locations that are in high need neighborhoods. And these have proven to be a great partnership because all of them have the Birth and Beyond program where they have workers who go into people's homes and do home visits after they have a baby. And they see a lot of what's going on in that home. And they are able to identify when there might be domestic violence going on and make a referral to a counselor who's embedded at that site so that the victim can come and actually get counseling at the Family Resource Center. They offer a lot of other programs such as, you know, healthy parenting and taking care of babies and that kind of thing. So it's just a really good partnership so that, you know, people are already coming to get supports from this location. And then we are able to provide specific support for people who have that need around domestic violence. Other agency partnerships. So these are, again, partnerships where we may not be embedded, but for instance, the LGBT Community Center, we do trainings with them. They have programming that targets the LGBT community and they bring us in to provide part of the programming. St. John's Program for Real Change, they serve homeless women experiencing homelessness, and they have a really strong alcohol and drug program. It's not something we offer. So, and they don't offer domestic violence and sexual assault counseling. So again, we collaborate with them to provide those missing pieces. I want to specifically talk about our collaboration with Next Move and Goodwill Homeless Services, because this was kind of went out on a limb with this one. They asked us to contract with them to provide supportive services to their transitional housing families on the Mather campus. They have a lot of housing out at Mather. One of the programs is for transitional families. And our hypothesis was that a lot of these families would have been experiencing in the past or currently domestic violence, sexual assault, and sex trafficking. And in fact, that is the actual truth. So since July of 2021, we've served 52 families. They have apartments for up to 26 families, depending on the configuration of the families. They're old barracks. So sometimes if it's a big family, they're taking 2 apartments. So there are currently 21 families still out there, but we've served 52. Their goal is to be out of that housing within 1 year. And so a lot of what we're doing is providing strengths model case management. So helping them build on their strengths and identify things that they need to do to move past barriers. It's the same model of case management that we do in our own residential programs and transitional programs. And we provide counseling and children's programming. So we're doing all of the softer services while they're actually running the facility itself. 24 of the families we've worked with thus far exited to permanent housing. And that's the goal of that program, is we want people in permanent housing, which, as you can imagine, these days in Sacramento County is very challenging. It's challenging to find something that they can afford, and it's challenging to find landlords who will take, especially a family that's had kind of a rocky rental history. We have a 77% success rate of those who enter the program exiting to permanent housing. And this is an exciting statistic to me. 100% of the people that we've helped get into permanent supportive housing at the 6-month mark have not accessed any services for people who are unhoused. That means they are living their best life. They are not continuing to get any social services around experiencing homelessness, and they have launched and have moved beyond that. So I think our belief is this is a really good model, and we think that the county and others would be wise to replicate it, because we come at our supportive services from a very different angle than people who are providing traditional homelessness services. We're really coming at it from that client-centered and really acknowledging the trauma that people have experienced, and that's an important way to approach some of these fragile families. A success story that we had a survivor who started with us in 2021, and at the time had not disclosed that she was a domestic violence survivor, and was starting to be stalked and abused by her ex. She also had some substance abuse challenges. And honestly, the staff at Next Move was ready to just tell her she had to leave the program, but we were able to work with her, get her into counseling, really support her through her AOD work, and most importantly, help with safety planning for the staff and also for her, for when her abuser did come on campus and try to harass her. She went through all of our programs, our self-love workshop, our life coaching program, our ready to rent program. We threw all of the supports at her, and she ended up getting a job in one of our retail stores, which is amazing, and was able to get an emergency housing voucher and move out into her own apartment. And we were really proud of her ability to learn healthy ways of addressing stress and anxiety, and demonstrating her ability to maintain strong boundaries with unhealthy people. So that's a success story, one of many out on that campus. We see these types of things also within our own housing, but this again is I think a really good model where somebody else runs the actual housing and we come in and provide the services. This is some artwork from some of the clients. Again, they're living in this program for a year. We try to offer all the things we can to encourage them to express themselves through art, music, whatever form lifts them up, and to work on their wellness as well as their just basic needs for housing and food and moving beyond this program. And then we're going to show you a video, and I'm going to turn it over to Timiza to talk about some really special collaboratives that we have in the South area.
Why are African American women nearly 2.5 times more likely than white women to be murdered by their intimate partner? Why are they murdered 5 years younger than the national average? And why, in spite of all of this, are they more likely to remain with their abusive partner? What's really going on? I started researching intimate partner violence a few years ago, and for the life of me, I couldn't figure out why African American women experience the poorest outcomes. There are systems in place. The police, shelters, emergency rooms, and community practitioners are all available. Why are these women not seeking the help that they need? And at what cost? Wondered.
Thank you. That video really highlighted some of the conversations that we had internally. I remember both Beth and our CEO and our president Ashley initiated meetings that with our staff around the intent to really tackle biases and systemic racism within the agency. We began to really reach out and understand why had there been. We noticed that Black and African American clients were overrepresented in our housing, underrepresented in other services, and other mandated programs like counseling. They had to be in those programs based on, some of their situations. And we realized, based on that same video, why aren't Black and African American families, women seeking services? And in 2018, we sought out a grant through Blue Shield to really connect with this question. And the goal was to identify the most effective and culturally responsive strategies, right, that engage African American Black residents in South Sacramento and address domestic and sexual violence. In doing so, we had to reach out with different partners. We wanted to ensure, again, this wasn't a siloed approach. This was a collaborative community approach. Some of our partnerships included South Sacramento Christian Center, Rose Family Creative Empowerment Center, Sacramento Children's Home, Escape Velocity, Kaiser Permanente, She Could Be My Daughter, and Voices of Youth. With this partnership, we began working together to support this community, but our organization, our partnership, Sacramento Healthy Black Families, is what this collaborative was called. We knew the target was to support how families were receiving services, ensuring that they were healthy. And so this was really the premise of the name, Sacramento Healthy Black Families. And so some of the things in this partnership really leveraged on how are we finding out what's happening, right? And so we began having listening sessions that really helped evolve some of the things that we didn't know about to really ensure that we were supporting these communities in the way that they needed to be supported. We were hearing from our partnerships on how our partnerships can really support and really in the gap of having families access services in the right ways. I wanted to begin and highlight one of our partnerships here. Escape Velocity is one of our partners that we worked with at the in the middle, and now we continue working with. Dana Maisha was the founder of Escape Velocity and was founded in 2017. Dana Maisha passed away in 2020. And the goal of Escape Velocity has always been to reach programming with youth to really expand on healthy families, opening up doors for family connections, safety, mental health, and expanding their growth through literacy development. Dana's vision was to really respond to the needs of the underserved youth and their families, and by offering programs, services, and referrals to create that wholeness of literacy, enrichment, and the well-being of creating space and opportunity. When Dana died, Felicia, as her counterpart, her co-leader, took over these services because we knew how impactful and important it was to the community. Felicia is now the program director at Escape Velocity, and there has never been a gap in accessing these services. And I want to share the testimonial from Felicia and what she said about working with this partnership and how it's really aided in how she's been able to continue on. Escape Velocity really appreciates and values the partnership with Weave and our other South Sacramento Healthy Black Families Collaborative. This partnership has resulted in collaboration of shared beliefs, ideas, resources, and building capacity so that we all have strengthened our services and programs around domestic violence, awareness, and prevention. One of the greatest successes of this partnership has been continuing the work and uplifting and empowering the community, despite the barriers, chaos, and uncertainty we endured during the past 2 years of COVID. The support of the collaborative has kept Escape Velocity going. after the passing of our founder, Dana Maisha. Without the partnerships, we probably wouldn't have continued thus far. So this is just one testimonial, but we know that our partnerships are vital to the work that we do in really ensuring that we are supporting the clients in the community in the way that is culturally responsive, holistic, and an individualized service to each and every member that comes in through those doors. We know it's not a comfortable feeling to walk in those doors, but we want to allow the community and want them to know that we are here for them and supporting them through all our efforts. Here's another a slide of the work that we're doing in the community and our tablecloth that the collaborative really wanted folks to see them, wanted the families in the community to be able to feel comfortable in connecting with services. And when one of the barriers had been, I don't see myself represented, is services for me. And we wanted folks to know in the community that Weave is for them. Services are for all genders, all communities. And this tablecloth really is reflective of that. We also created an outreach card that lets them know, same pictures on it, because this was something that was a connector that the collaborative put together. And our card says we are providing support and creating pathways for healing. And that's what we are really aiming to do and continue to do within the community. And we have supports of ambassadors as a result of this program, those who have had lived experience, because they too are connectors to those accessing services. We have these youth who are able to support other youth who also may be going through domestic violence, sexual assault, or sex trafficking. So we realize there's not one pathway to healing, and we want it to be expansive of such. So I want to now go into Weave's commitment to really continuing to do this work in serving unserved and underserved communities. The IDEA department is a department in which I now lead, and IDEA represents inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. This program means the world to me. It really truly shows that we are evolving in our work. We are not stagnant in creating systems that drive change, and we are committed for organizational and community level change. This department creates the employee experience through recruitment, onboarding during that time here at Weave. This department will also oversee the agency's training to ensure culturally responsive services, manage projects supporting the unserved and underserved populations, and providing an overview of our initiatives and our expectations. The picture shown here was created by an advocate, Ariel, with the team's collaboration. And the words on here really speak out to what this department aims to do: build trusting relationships with respect and compassion that support the unserved and underserved communities. I hope to share more with you about this department, but I want to let you know we are continuing here to commit to our creating a culture of belonging for every survivor, employee, and volunteer. The past 7 years have included intentional work to seek feedback from survivors, community partners, and other employees to really identify our strengths and where we want to do better. The evolution of this work resulted in our creation of our department, but does not stop here. So thank you so much for learning and leaning into how we want to better support our communities, and also leveraging how we support our work through community engagement, program management, our staff, and commitment to engaging how we are enfolding our work through a DNA lens of Weave, and that this is truly a main asset of how we want to link to supporting survivors and our commitment to partnership. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Timiza and Beth, for sharing this information going through this conference call and presentation today. Would now like to open things up for questions. So if you have any questions, feedback, comments for Beth or Timiza, feel free to drop it into the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. But don't be shy, we still have plenty of time, and Beth and Timiza welcome all of the questions. Alyssa, were there any questions in the chat?
Not currently. Deanna just left us a great comment. Keep up the great work. I've simply been amazed by how fast Weave has evolved and expanded within our community during my sponsorship involvement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for being here today and just learning a little bit about what we do. We have a lot going on, and we're very proud of the work that we do, and we could never do any of it without all of you by our side. So sending out my appreciation, and we always are happy to answer questions if anything comes up later or you want to reach out. Always love to share our work with you, and always happy to answer whatever you might be wondering about what we do.
And yes, both Beth and Timiza's contact information is there up on the screen. Like I mentioned, we are recording this presentation today. So for everyone who RSVP'd, or if you're here attending today, give us a few days to edit it and whatnot, and we will definitely get this emailed out to you so you can have for future, if you would like to share with anyone. It will also be on our website. So stay tuned. Don't want to overtalk. If someone is drummed up a question, I'll stay silent for another moment or so. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your support. I see lots of donors here, other supporters. So thank you for all that you do, all your actions to act towards ending violence here in our community. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you all.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Oh,
You need to do something, Alyssa.
no, I was just wondering, Ron, do you have a question? I can't quite tell. Or were you just saying bye?
Well, I can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was saying goodbye, but I had a question in the back of my mind. You know, as you were giving the presentation, it seemed like there were like a couple of dozen of different entities. Maybe it's just me, but it seemed like, how does anybody know how to navigate all of those?
It can be challenging, but you know, we have wonderful staff here at Weave. We have an executive leadership team that reports directly to the CEO, Beth. And then we also have then just a leadership team that likely reports to either directly to Beth or to those on an executive leadership team. So it's really ensuring that our staff is strong and knowledgeable, as well as being able to know who those points of contact are at these different organizations. All of these embedded advocates, there's signed contracts that go along with it. So each side has the agreement and knows what they are showing up to do. And there's meetings regularly for those who are in which we have embedded advocates. That person is on site, so they are not reporting necessarily to a Weave office every day. They're reporting to the law enforcement office or to the school. So they're the eyes and the ears at those particular locations, and can report back if they see anything that needs to be cleaned up or that's going wrong or ways to improve. But it really is the strength of our executive team, our leadership team, and all of the advocates that we have showing up, you know, every day to these sites to build and continue to strengthen these partnerships. But lots of paperwork, lots of, you know, oversight to ensure we can keep things straight.
Is there any like a I know this is gonna sound like a corporate, but I'm a corporate guy. Is there any like an org chart that would make, you know, when somebody first comes in and they have all these problems, Obviously, you guys know how to interview these people, and then to figure out, okay, well, where's the first point that they should go to, and so on. But for those that might not feel that comfortable, I know you guys are probably very skilled at saying, I don't think that person looks comfortable. Maybe I'll make myself available. But it would be handy to have some, I think, some sort of a pictorial view of all these that are available, and then maybe a little something behind it that said, yeah, this is what this group does, just like what you did here on a shrunken basis. But I mean, if I was thinking, if I was a 14-year-old boy, and I was having problems, it would be hard for me to even want to go. But if I did go, I'd want to know, oh my God, where in this landscape, where should I go? Now, you guys would certainly point that person, but for those that might not want to seek they're going to feel kind of tentative to begin with. So, going in would be kind of like, okay, where's the food? Where's the grocery department? Where's the detergent? Where are the cereal? Where is it? Where is everything?
And the thing, so you bring up a really good point, Ron, because it is intimidating when there's so many services that can be offered to an individual, and maybe they don't even know what kind of help they need when they take that first step to realize they need some kind of support and help. So here at Weave, our first point of contact for many folks is calling our 24-hour support line. And our support line, these folks are working around the clock, and sometimes they could be new and still in training and don't know everything yet. We have a resource book that all of those support line folks have. So depending on what someone is sharing and what they're experiencing, not me myself, but they flip through that book and then can say, we don't do that directly, but we know our partner organization does, or let me connect you not to myself, the support line, but to one of our advocates, a Weave advocate that works at the police department or whatnot, and they can take you on and take you a bit further and dive into the support services that you might need. And the same thing happens at each of these different organizations. So for example, Beth was talking about Next Move. This is a program that primarily supports people who are experiencing homelessness. Some of those folks experiencing homelessness have also experienced or currently experiencing sexual assault or domestic violence. So they might reach out and be talking to their Next Move advocate or the person that they're working on with that program. And based off of maybe what they're sharing or some of the questions that are being asked of that person, it's identified that they need Weave services and Weave support. So they're already working with an organization, and based off of the questions that those folks have been trained to ask, we because of that partnership, we ensure that the Next Move employees and advocates are tooled with some basic, questions to ask. So if someone is answering yes or no to these, they know, okay, I need to make sure I connect you with someone at Weave because it seems like you might need some specific Weave services. And that's taking place in the schools, again, in all of our different partnerships to ensure that if you're not the expert necessarily on sexual assault, sex trafficking, or domestic violence, you know who to call at Weave so we can connect that person and ensure that they are receiving not only the services, for example, transitional housing or support with their housing, but also can receive services as it relates to violence as well. So it does take that person to take the first step to receive some kind of help, either, for housing or through law enforcement. Maybe they're experiencing something, and law enforcement maybe identifies something. And then they circle back to Weave so we can follow up with that person to ensure that they can get the help they need.
So all these advocates, they're all cross-trained enough to know what all the other, wherever this one place the person went to, one of, I don't know how many, everybody, all those embedded advocates in all those other locations, they know exactly what they do and what all the other groups do.
I don't want to speak for them, but I know for a fact they all know to touch back to Weave. If they don't know the answer and have all of the resources, maybe in a binder or a book or have them down, they can go to Weave and say, hey, I have someone and they are experiencing this, and this. I know that Weave has so many different partnerships within the community and access to so many different services. Can you help me? Can you help me figure this out? Because I want to help this person and, I don't know exactly who to call. They can come directly back to Weave and we can help do that.
So how many employees are at this mothership that would be the right person that somebody would be referred to? How many are at the home base?
At the home, so when you say home base, do you mean like our
Weave? You said they would call Weave directly.
Yeah, so we have, the number, I know we have over 100 employees doing on-call services, or we have, our folks on leadership. On our leadership team, 5 to 6, and all of those leaders, executive leaders, have managers, have supervisors and things that report. So then it continues to trickle out. Like I mentioned, our first point of contact, though, for so many is our support line, and anyone can call our support line. If you have a question of, hey, my neighbor, or I just have a question in general and maybe just wanted to have information about resources, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you can call our support line, and there will always be someone there to answer a question, even if it's just a question on, I know someone, or me myself are experiencing violence, or what is the relationship and what's the Sacramento Police Department support line number where I can call them directly. They can answer those questions for you. And there's always, at least, depending on the time of day, there's sometimes calls come in, at higher volume times. So they ensure that there's more staff there to answer those phone calls. But those are, folks, and that's what they do. They report to the call center. Some of them are taking those calls, on our cell phone. We have a system where they can take those calls on their cell phones from secure locations and secure places to answer those questions for our community and patch them back to where they, or provide them with the resources or additional information so folks can just maybe receive services for themselves or just simply have questions asked.
Well,
Does that help? Does that help?
Maybe they should just call your line directly.
Yeah, my line directly. and the thing is, sometimes we do. Sometimes we do. So I work in philanthropy. So donations is sometimes when people will call, they'll just maybe have a question about donations, and maybe that's donations of, maybe they need some clothing or they need food or something of that nature. So sometimes our support line folks will hear donation and maybe not hear the rest of it, or maybe that's all the person might share. And then I get a phone call of, I need to be connected with, some support for clothing or for food resources and things of that nature. So I know enough to help folks to a certain degree. If not, I know someone on the executive leadership team that I can connect someone with. I just did that yesterday. There was actually a high school student that is doing a research project for their senior project. They're doing some research about, it's a law that was recently passed, and they're doing their research on that. I don't know much about that, but I connected them to our programs director that likely did. So they can help this high school student get the information they need to complete their research project.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Go ahead. I see you getting ready to ask it. Oh, wait, if you're talking, I cannot hear you. I see your lips moving, but I don't hear anything coming out. Oh, maybe.
Feel free to use the chat function if that's easier.
Definitely see you talking, but don't hear you. Wonderful. Yeah, but put it in the chat, and then Alyssa will, I don't see the chat, but Alyssa will read it to me, and we can see if we could get that question answered for you.
You can always also email us as well.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions or comments? Like Alyssa mentioned as well, so Timiza and Beth's emails are there, but if you ever have a question, just kind of need that quick Weave answer, info@weaveinc.org. So it sends it to myself and several other folks on staff. And we get a lot of emails to that email address on a daily basis that are asking all different types of things. And oftentimes when I see them, I respond as they relate to donations and such, but there are other people who can see this email as well and will respond as it relates to need of services, programs offered, our retail store that we get a lot of questions about. I want to donate a couch, or I want to donate, clothing. So someone also can see from our retail team, but info@weaveinc.org is our general kind of email address if you're needing information about Weave. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Well, thank you all for your time. Definitely appreciate it, and look forward to our follow-up here soon with the recording of this conference call. Thank you. Have a good one.